Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys have all had a great weekend and you're ready for another busy week in the markets. As you know, every Sunday I like to go through around 10 to 15 or so names that I like and I share a bit of my thought process behind each pick. I also want to bring to light the fact that we are running a summer sale right now for my home server at 8x Trades. I'll leave the link down below. So make sure you go ahead and check that out as well. And if you'd like to receive my watch list a day in advance so you can use it as a form of homework to, go in and prep, create your own analysis, and then compare your results with mine after I release my video, make sure to check me out on X at AB Trades, where I also have my checklist market guide infographic. Again, every time I chart, I like to cross off as many things as I can from that little list. And I highly recommend you go and check it out and use it whenever you start charting. I think it's very, very applicable and it gives you a really good sense as to the things that I need to see, the criteria, and all the things I filter for when I'm going through each name. As always, remember this is not financial advice. This is just me sharing how I'm approaching the market, and hopefully it gives you a few more ideas to add to your own little list. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up on the list is Nike. And this is actually a name that I've already been positioned for within the 8x trades community. We took a really nice entry down here around the low 42s because for me, the reasoning behind that is you have a really nice base being established here, right? You have a nice base where price is just kind of consolidating within a range. Now, the unfortunate part is that price will trade out the same way it traded in, right? And you're consolidating under a gap that was created by aggressive selling, and you never fully recovered it. And what I liked about what happened is when you have these bases, right? And you're creating consolidation within a range and you've solidified the top and bottom. When you break underneath, in theory, this area here should reject on a retest, right? And it should break down. But the difference between Nike is that instead of it failing here, where you actually had the displacement into new lows, you actually countered displacement with displacement. So you actually had an aggressive move down that then was reclaimed with another aggressive move back up, creating overlapping inefficiencies. And that is usually what I like to reference as broadening inversions whenever they happen into new external lows, because you displace aggressively, you create your potential manipulation, and then you aggressively reclaim back. And what I like about this is that this aggressive outside day from exhaustion lows actually came back to wick and held buyers, and now you have a gap up with a full daily body close near highs. Right, so that's already a really good sign. And now it's setting up to be a really nice power of three. If you don't remember what a power of three is, I actually did a trade recap on that, and you'll see the little image pop up here in a bit. And it's basically going into the fact that you go into a scenario of accumulation, manipulation, then distribution. And because I think this is a bullish PO3 because of how you reclaimed those major external lows that were buyers, significant buyers until you broke them, now you're setting up to kind of push you through. And so what I would like to see headed into next week is I would not mind if we got some kind of 4 hour or daily reset, right? Something that came in within the internal and kind of developed before trading back up into those monthly highs. So first off, I really like how it's already delivering. The change in state of delivery from these manipulation nodes has already been very constructive for buyers. And you can even go in and make the case that you've already created your first higher low here, right? Look at that. You've already created a really nice higher low at your 4 hour golden pocket. And if this is going to be a true like internal sequence, you should get something like this, right? That then corresponds to the daily leg. So I think it's setting up really well. I am optimistic about a potential reset, and if not, I would just like to see a full-on delivery through. And I will also say this, that when this gets through those monthly and weekly highs, the next dip just becomes a higher magnitude, higher low that then creates your first instance of your inverse head and shoulders. And I talk about this all the time in 8x trades but whenever you're in a downtrend, I'm going to put you on some game here, and you initially take out that first set of highs or lower highs, when you break that, you actually create the next sequence of MMBM. And the best way to identify this market maker buy model is when you do create that first instance of an inverse head and shoulder either at the top or bottom of the range, which is exactly what's happening here if you do get through all those hurdles. So yeah, I really like Nike for August, September, all that stuff. And into a bigger time frame target, maybe like into late Q3, early Q4 would definitely be 57 up into 60. So we'll see how that plays out. Next up on the list is NVDA, and this is setting up once again, and I'll walk you through what happened over here. So back over here, you had an aggressive little manipulation range that then gave you a nice weekly, monthly expansion. Price then kind of traded back into that higher time frame discount within like the next 2 months before aggressively giving you new highs. So now the same thing can be said here, because when you take this expansion low to this expansion high, price is now doing something very similar, right? Within a 2 month span, like late May, right now pushing into late June, early July, this could maybe consolidate for maybe another week or two before finding your next expansion into August and early Q3. Okay, so keep an eye on this in terms of its development. It's doing a lot of similar things in terms of how long the compression or engineered liquidity takes place before its next expansion leg. So I really like this as it's entering now into our most optimal entry for that weekly and monthly expansion. Next up on the list is NVIDIA, and I really like NVIDIA because when we look at just this weekly, for example, and once again, everything I do is very, very, very identical. And I'm going to go ahead and mark this out as well, because I think this is going to be important here in a bit. And we're actually going to label it as inversion here, bring it out a little bit, just like that. Okay. So when I take this weekly, you have a really nice external sweep of lows that then aggressively pushes, right, for like I said, of 6 to 8 weeks into those new highs. So we have now a very clean dealing range, right? From swing low to swing high, we have a very clean dealing range, and you can see that the weekly and monthly came back into our point of discount. Okay, and what this discount did is now you created weekly inversion from the sweep, because what price did is it came back to rebalance. You had a rebalance here, you also have another rebalance here if you really wanted to, right? You came back and rebalanced price, and again, price will trade out the same way it traded in. If this is coming from down up and you come back into a discount, you're going down up, right? So zooming into the daily, you can see where that inversion is created, and it's now against a weekly high, and we now have a clean daily OB that displaced through a gap. Remember, from historical trends, gap downs tend to reject price, gap ups tend to support price. But why in this case did we just immediately displace and close almost near highs through a gap? So if we don't get any immediate continuation, I would actually like to see some kind of reset, similar to what happened over here, where you kind of came back, retested some hourly breaker, and then ran. I would like to see some kind of reset that kind of comes back into that little inversion and then takes you up into 2117, 221 would be my next targets. So this is setting up really, really cleanly. I would not be surprised to see some kind of aggressive dip if so, or just some kind of daily reset that then trades you back up into 214, 217, 221. Setting up really, really nicely. The weekly delivery is really pretty. Really hard to ignore something like this. I mean, this is just a big old reference point that probably gives you some kind of reset this week if you don't get any immediate continuation. And if you do, again, you just get those targets earlier. This looks super good. Another name on the list, and I'm going to actually mention something towards the end of the video, so if you want to actually potentially see where I think the next rotation of names are, stick around to the end, and you might be able to get a good idea of what that sector/theme might be into this next week. Another name I really like is PayPal, and this one's just a pretty straightforward chart. You've gotten really good delivery here through a weekly and monthly high, and I like the inside 4 hour that actually retested those monthly highs, and you're also coming off of a daily gap up. And what I like about this is that you had a very aggressive candle Thursday with follow through into Friday that almost closed near high of day, a bit muted actually because it didn't do that much. But when you're looking at the internals, this has a lot of good potential to stride up into this gap, right? This gap has not really been tested since it's been created, and now you have the structural evidence within the lower time frames to do so. And if you really wanted to get nitpicky, you could even come in here, whoops, and take into account the 4-hour deviations paired with the daily deviations, right? And then you can even take into account the daily, but those would be a bit more aggressive. But look at how these deviations line up really cleanly with the gap, and I would not be surprised to see something around like this area here get tested. So with follow through and maybe some retests if it wants, because it has been in a pretty clean trend, you could do something like this. So I like PayPal with its current strength that it's been showing. I really like the gap up because on any retest, it should be very supportive and indicative of buyers. Same thing with DG here. Again, this one is just really pretty build up on the 4. I like how you're displacing through. And what I like about this displacement is it came from a really nice sweep, right? 113.32, and your low is now 113.20. Really nice sweep of lows that then aggressively push through a lot of that internal supply. And if you look at the daily buildup, I think it's generating for a really nice push soon. And that push, I would not be surprised to see this go up into about 124, 128 areas, right? Remember, price trades out the same way it traded in. So if you traded up, now you're consolidating, I would not be to see it trade out the same way. And my targets would be up into that 126, 130 zone. You can even take into account the like standard deviations, right? If we're just using the 4-hour alone, look, here to here, and I bet you those -2s are right up into that. I gotta get this low. I gotta anchor it correctly. It's right 132.20 right here. And I bet you those -2s are probably going to line up into those targets, right? Look at the -1 up into -2. Look at that. Perfectly into that exterior and little inefficiency / vol and bow gap that hasn't been tested. So I really like Dollar General as well. I think this buildup could still take maybe another few days if it's not ready just yet. But if you get an immediate push through 121 and the daily holds, I would look for a scenario like this. Or you could go for one more sweep to test that gap before properly running up. Definitely two ways to approach this, but this external and internal buildup looks really good paired with that 4-hour manipulation sweep that aggressively put you back into the range. Very supportive of follow through in my opinion. Next up on the list is LULU. Very similar to PayPal and Dollar General. Again, I really like when you have these little sweeps paired with some kind of confluence, right? You have a gap right there paired with the sweep. Look at how price redelivers. This is like one of the things in my checklist guide that I talk about all the time. It's the range reclaims and how price redelivers, right? If you go into a range and take out some lower high, but immediately expand back into it and you do it aggressively, this is a really nice outside bar that comes off of exhaustion lows from a nice internal sweep that then gaps up to take out previous week high. So for me, something like this, I would love follow through, right? And also to paint a picture, this is LULU at the bottom of the range. What did we just discuss when we talked about a name earlier? What potentially happens at the bottom of those ranges? You've already shown some nice potential here. And I bet you if you come in and take just this little internal dealing range and annotate the top end there and draw your discount. Wow, look at that. Can't make this up, right? Is this going to be the first potential higher low that then delivers? I think LULU is setting up really cleanly as well. And I'll cover what I think is occurring into the end of this video. But very clean structure with potential. You did get a failure at your previous week high with a daily close back into the range where sellers should be persistent. So again, keep an eye on for a potential dip and rip, or maybe even another swing through the 110 lows that then aggressively pushes you back up. Next up on the list, and this one's a pretty quick one. This one is just a really nice weekly and daily. So You have a weekly breaker with volume and bow that is supportive of your daily structure when you go from swing low to swing high. Clean potential to be a higher low to trade back up into that like 1000 plus range. And I like it because of the confluence that coexist on the daily. You also have a gap, and it's also a weekly breaker and all that stuff. So this one's pretty clean. If you can find acceptance and continue to develop above 900, I think you could be setting up for a 1040, 1100 again. Pretty straightforward. The same thing for this one, guys. Again, just taking into account the dealing range, swing low to swing high, price is structurally back into discount. The only reason I like this is because you came back to rebalance. You have a really nice supportive gap here, right? You took out a monthly low that then gapped up and displaced. Now the only issue here is we have a flip zone. So in your 4 hour, this is a really good supportive area where buyers were once present, and you could see all the rejections that occur there. So this is a high reaction zone that I do want to point your attention to. And notice how as you come into that previous week high, you come into this flip zone. You do have daily displacement, so I would like to see this kind of stall and try and flip through it to then run up into those relative equal highs at 83 if possible post ER. But you have really good structure. There's good potential to develop from here. You just now need the aggressive reclaim through 80. So you also have an internal broadening here. So keep in mind that this could go back and give you some resets. But if it stays above like 73, I think this is still very much supportive of a nice potential move back up into 82, 83. Also, a different name that I don't think a lot of people are talking about right now is COP. And I really, really like this daily development. I love how you have an aggressive reclaim through your monthly and weekly, right? And now you're kind of creating a really nice form of sell side delivery that pushes you back into the range. So I think if this continues, you're going to utilize that Tuesday candle from July 7th paired with your weekly high and also some form of inversion because you went through an aggressive sweep that then displaced back through a gap down, and now you're using that to kind of engineer and fabricate a little bit. You're only taking out one external low, not the other. So this could create like your pivot machine gun type of thing where it's a domino effect, right? You kind of absorb, generate just those lows, continue to push back, and then you get just a very strong move up into about 113, 114, where I do think this is where you could find some rejections. I think oil potentially gets a pop, but I think that pop gets faded into those obstacles on the daily. Also, another name that I think is being very slept on is DLO, D Local Limited. I'm not sure what this is, but I'm a little late to the party, but there's still a lot of things to like, right? You have a really nice weekly dealing range here that created a nice three driver pattern that then found buyers off the golden pocket from the OB and the little gap, found displacement, and now you have a really nice potential, technically I would say, inside hammer bar that actually respected a weekly breaker, right? This is where you had sellers, you displaced down into new lows, and then aggressively reclaimed, and now you're consolidating above that last known area of significant overhead, now a weekly breaker coming off of your weekly golden pocket. So my assumption would be is if this continues to develop above 12-ish, I think you're about to get a really nice move into 16.7 and 18.2. Very clean chart. I haven't actually seen a lot of people talk about this. I'm not sure if there's like really good options chains on this or not, but this kind of move definitely gets you a pretty like nice run on liquidity. Because of how you generated and fabricated this liquidity, I think you can get a pretty nice acceleration through that 17, 18 mark. Because I mean, think about it. You consolidated for like what? This has been consolidating since August of 2025, and you're now seeing your first set of breakthrough. So I think this gets followed through into earnings. Another like little potential chart is Ford. You're back into the discount. Really nice little broadening here. And I think if it wants to finish, I think you get a nice run eventually into ER and post. So I think this is more of a slow run, but I think it's setting up for a bigger run into Q3. Now I also want to talk about one more name here, and then I'll give you like three other names, but I won't really cover charts because I don't want to keep this video too long. But a name that I think is also going to could be a sleeper pick into Q3 is ULTA. This is your monthly, guys. Monthly rebalance, now holding inside, but continuing to potentially push all the way through. I wouldn't be surprised if it stays inside. It gets really close to like 490s. But this is a really nice monthly rebalance. You finally came back to test this breaker paired with your monthly golden pocket, right? From swing low to swing high, coming off of a nice monthly external. You got this crazy expansion. Now you have this overhead to deal with, which I do think this becomes a point of rejection later on. But I think this is where the target gets you to then find rejections. But I think it's setting up really, really nicely now at this monthly discount, and you swept all of these internals here. I personally think ULTA could be a really good sleeper pick into Q3 for like a little pop through like 580s, maybe 600s, and then he finds a more aggressive rejection. But I think here is definitely where we are setting up to be in buyer's courts. And if I even show you this, look at how clean this is right here. Right, you finally swept all this nonsense, and now you're setting up pretty cleanly on the daily. You had a really nice gap up. You have a lot of obstacles to work with, so like ULTA through 490 gives this an even better run. Like this could be super explosive if it's able to kind of properly break through. So this would be a major point right here, and we can even annotate it out like this. Let me bring this down a little bit, just like that. And we can label this must, oh no, HTF reclaim, right? So if you can get expansion through this and then a reset and go, oh my gosh, man, I think ULTA could be a very, very nice sleeper pick. Okay, following ULTA, I have another name, and then I'm going to reveal what I think could be the next rotation headed into this week. Okay, so we have Airbnb here on the monthly, and we have a really nice 3-1. You can see there's been a lot of chop that has occurred on Airbnb, but when I start zooming down to the 2-week and the weekly, look at how supportive now price is starting to be in between that supply high, right? Look at since 2025, look at how it's failed to really get any follow through, right? Coming back into June, this is the first time we've actually had a higher time frame close that got redelivery and a successful retest. Zooming down into the weekly, you actually went failed 2 week that put you back into the top end of that range. So for me, I think this is getting ready to just get a really nice like external push within the weekly and the monthly time frame. I personally think Airbnb, I mean, if earnings aren't freaking terrible, which, you know, it's hard to say that they usually are, but if this time is different, I think Airbnb can set up for a nice run up into about 165, 170 zone. Okay, so keep an eye on how this is developing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because once again, you had a daily sweep through a gap that started to push back into those external highs. Whether or not you can, I mean, this is still potentially setting up for a pop and drop that then gets you a more corrective move. That's another scenario to keep an eye on. But names like LULU, Nike, ULTA, PayPal, Airbnb, what do they all have in common, guys? These are all within the consumer goods, right? Your consumer cyclical, non-cyclical. So within this specific sector, these names all have very similar buildup on the lower time frame leading up into the externals, right? All of your weeklies and dailies look very, very identical. And I think if it's not this week, I think these little set of names from your consumer goods, I think they're going to get some really good follow through. Potentially could be leaders in Q3. I'm not entirely sure, but they all have really nice weekly bases, really nice daily reversals setting up from these major lows, and I think they could finally get some really good rotation. And then the other three names that I probably won't spend too much time on are Roblox and Hood. This is Roblox weekly. You literally have no obstacles above. If I show you all the inefficiencies that exist, there's literally no weekly overhead that exists. So like you probably base and then rip is my assumption. Same thing for Reddit. When I show you Reddit weekly and Reddit daily, I feel like a little reset is at store, but then you get a nice dip and rip. Same thing for hood. They're all developing very similar, so maybe growth sees a lot more follow through within these like expansion legs that they're in. Look at hoods overhead. There's not really much to stop it. Yeah, you got some pretty weak weekly candles, but I think those just give you an opportunity to add another layer to run through ER. But yeah, that's pretty much it, and that concludes all the names for my watch list. If you guys enjoyed this, please leave a like, subscribe. Let's get to that 5,000 mark. I really want to get there. That would mean a lot to me. So continue to show support. Tell all your friends and family about me. Tell them to come check out AB Trades. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the Discord. And if you have any other questions, leave your comments down below, or hit me up on X in my DMs or through Discord. I'm usually available during the week. So yeah, see you guys all next week. Have a good and blessed Sunday. See ya.